Welcome. We are going to get started in a couple seconds just to allow attendees to join the webinar. Okay, hello. My name is Anna, and it's my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Constituent Relations to welcome you all to this 49er Industry Chat. Before we get started, just want to inform you that this session is being recorded and it will be available afterwards on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Once it's posted, feel free to share it with a friend, fellow alumni, or someone that you think could benefit from this 49er Industry Chat. We also highly encourage you to use the Q&A box to submit any questions you may have for our guest speaker. My colleague, Rosalinda, will be helping moderate the chat during the webinar. And now I would like to introduce our alumni host, Cornelia Nicholson. Welcome. I'll start off by reading your bio really quick before we jump in.
Sounds good.
So Cornelia is a morning news anchor known for her energetic delivery, strong news judgment, and commitment to community-centered storytelling. A Southern California native, she graduated from Cal State Long Beach in 2018 with a degree in journalism. She has reported and anchored for statewide newscasts in Montana and Tennessee, covering everything from breaking news to in-depth community stories. She now brings her experience back home to California, anchoring the morning news in Bakersfield, helping viewers start their day informed and connected. Cornelia, thank you so much for being here today and welcome. If you would like to share anything else I may have missed.
No, that was perfect. I'm just so happy to be here with you all and just honored that you guys asked me to do the 49er Industry Chat.
Yeah, very exciting. We can't wait to hear about your story. So with that being said, again, a reminder, Rosalind is moderating the chat. So if you've got any questions that may pop up that I'm not addressing, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And just to jump right in, I guess the first question is, start off a little bit with your background and what led you to CSULB and what was your student experience like?
Yeah, so with my background, I grew up in Southern California. So I'm originally from the Fullerton area. If you guys know Disneyland, the Anaheim area, that's kind of where I grew up. And so I went to high school over in Fullerton. But one of the reasons that led me to CSULB was because my father is also an alumni from Long Beach as well.
Amazing.
So keeping it in the 49er family.
Yep.
Also have an amazing journalism program. And that is something that I have known I wanted to do since, I would say, elementary school.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
And so just looking around for journalism programs in different schools. And of course, with Long Beach being my dad's alumni, I was like, well, it's a no-brainer.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, keep it in the family. I love that.
Exactly.
And so did you have any clubs that you participated in? What was your student experience like while you were attending?
Yeah, so I was actually president of the National Association of Black Journalists, the chapter at LB, which was really awesome. It was such a great experience trying to connect with other Black journalists and minority journalists at the campus and getting to bring in seasoned journalists from all over to do either Zoom calls and Zoom chats with us or have them come to the campus to do talks with us. I think that was really great. I also worked for the ASU as an intern, helping them do the campus videos that you probably see all around campus that are so that was really fun getting to work not only behind the scenes on filming some of the informational videos that you guys see as students walking around, but also getting to be in front of the camera and practice my, interviewing skills as well.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Yeah, super active on campus during your time here.
Yeah, I tried to be.
I love that. And so you kind of mentioned it was always your dream, to pursue this type of career.
Yeah.
So I guess, what made that more of that intentional journey? Like, how did you kind of discover this field?
So I would say discovered it honestly as a child because my parents were such avid news watchers. So that was a regular thing in my house to always wake up and my parents turn on the news, which I'm sure most people can kind of relate to growing up. Parents love watching the news. Those are like one of our most the category of people who are always watching the news. When we look at our ratings, it's that age group of people. So just always watching the news and so intrigued by seeing the reporters going out into the field and covering stories. And I I love writing. I love storytelling. And that was something that I know that I wanted to do because I wanted to be a representation for my community of people of color, women, and go and tell stories that may not be um, have a light shown on. So that was something that really intrigued me. And seeing other, watching KTLA, watching Fox LA, and seeing women that look like me, Pat Harvey, growing
Mhm.
up, that was something that inspired me to want to be able to do that as well, and also be a representation for those coming after me.
Amazing. I love that. It's like a full circle moment.
Yeah, it kind of is. It is.
And so, what was your first job in journalism, post graduation? And what did it start teaching you about that industry?
So my first job was in 2020. I moved to Montana, Billings, Montana. Had no idea anything about Billings,
Or how
no
cold?
clue about Montana. Yeah, I just knew I needed a job in the industry, and they were willing to hire me. And so I went for $12.25 an hour
Wow.
full time. I was a weekend producer and weekday reporter. So kind of, in this industry, when you first start out, you are probably going to go to the middle of nowhere. You're probably going to go miles and
Mhm.
miles away from home to get your start in news, and you're probably going to be doing it for very little money, which is unfortunate. Hopefully the industry will change in the future, but that's just the way it is, just so you can get your start. And you'll probably also
Mhm.
wear different hats when you first start out, because those smaller stations, everyone's kind of hands on deck, and everyone does
Right.
multiple roles at a time. So I was, like I said, the producer. So I would produce the newscast on the weekend. We had a 5, 6, 10, and 11. And in Montana, we were owned by, which is very interesting. Not a lot of stations are like this, but it's a family owned station. And they are headquartered in Spokane, Washington, but they had
Oh,
stations all throughout Montana.
okay.
So it's very different depending on like what station you're working for, who owns that station. But this one was really interesting because we had stations in Billings, Bozeman, Great Falls, Missoula, Montana, and so we would have those stations are owned by different people. My station in Billings specifically was NBC, but over in Missoula they were a conglomerate of ABC and Fox.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had the pleasure on the weekends of producing shows for NBC, ABC, and Fox, and those would air, on different times on different places in the state. So that was really interesting. Being able to do that and produce for different shows, and producing a show out of Billings, but it would air in a completely different side of the state. So that was really fun. But that taught me a lot about producing, and it taught me a lot about writing. And then during the week, I was a reporter, so going out into the community, uncovering stories, interviewing our public, our leaders. And at that time, with it being 2020, I had moved, I would say, a week and a half before the pandemic hit. So it was a very interesting time to start a brand new job and move to a completely different place, right when the world kind of shut down and was put on pause. So it was very interesting. But I would say a lot of my time in Montana was spent covering a lot of the COVID pandemic and the impact that it had
Mm-hmm.
in the community. So we did a lot of stories with the hospital, a lot of
Hmm.
stories with, I would say, like allergy clinics because of breathing
Yeah.
conditions, a lot with pharmacies, and just going out and talking to the public about how they felt about the pandemic, and all the certain laws and things that were happening at that time. So that really, I think, was so interesting, as someone who was just coming into the industry brand new, to kind of be thrust into um, a pandemic, and having to cover that pandemic, and having to be the one to inform the community of what was going on at the time, when you're still just trying to get your feet wet. So
Yeah, being thrown in the
definitely,
deep end.
yeah, really. And I feel like that's how typically this market, or this industry goes when you first start out. A lot of news stations, for anyone who's watching and planning to go into news, just be prepared that they will throw you into the deep end, no matter kind of what station you work at. It's all the same. Even when I talk to my friends who started out in Chattanooga, and I'm so sorry if you guys hear my dog playing with things.
Really
But
okay.
even people starting out in other markets, they also say the same thing, that you kind of get thrown to it. It's very much a sink or swim, but you do have, hopefully you will have, like at my station, coworkers that help support you, and if you have questions, we'll help you answer those questions. But it was definitely a learning curve, and I learned a lot. I feel like I owe a lot of who I am as a journalist because the foundation that I got at my first market and all the
Mhm.
things I learned in Montana. So that was a little bit about my first job. Hopefully that's
Wow.
a question.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's interesting that when you were saying, how you got that chance with that station to kind of help with news in different states. How
Yeah,
would you go about capturing stories then that would maybe relate to those areas,
right.
especially if you're not living there? How were you kind of gathering those types of news stories?
So what was really great is because we were all under the same company and they had stations in those markets, we had reporters in those markets. So I
Mhm.
would have to basically be the manager on the weekend and work with all those reporters. So it was a lot of texting. It was
Got it.
a lot of, emailing back and forth, them letting me know what they were working on, what stories they were turning. So that was one way that we were able to localize the content for
Mhm.
that market. But yeah, it was very interesting. One of the things that really comes to mind when I think about having to juggle all those reporters, being, miles away from me, there was one winter where we had a really bad snowstorm, and I had to have every reporter that was in those markets live for a big winter show. And we had planned it out where they were all going to have one live hit and it was going to be back to back to back. Well, and we only have two kind of live view channels, is what they're called. So each reporter, I can only have two reporters connected to our live view program at the same time. So the other two would have to be on standby until I texted them,
Mm,
connect to the backpack, and then we'll take your live. So it was a lot of juggling because I would have to tell the one reporter who was just live, okay, get off the live
right.
channel, hang up as soon as you can so I can connect the other reporters so that they can go live in 30 seconds. So that really was really fun. But we, unfortunately, our meteorologist, I forgot what happened to him, but it's a big weather day and it's a big weather show, but our meteorologist was not there and we had no one to do
No.
weather. So then I had to call the reporters that just did their live hits, and I was like, I need you to don't leave. I know you're in the snow. And so I had to keep them all out in the snow for the entire show. And we just kept going back and forth between all the reporters across the state, showing what snow conditions were like, and then just repeating, their story and what they know so far about what the snow is like and the plow conditions and things like that. So it was it was a lot,
Yeah,
but
being
it
quick
was
on your
fun. Yeah,
feet a
yeah,
lot.
yeah. It was fun because now I know, I learned to do it. I could do it in the future if need be. I hope I don't have to produce another live winter weather storm show again. But now that's great. It goes with me for, future markets where I can tell them I have, the ability to produce, but it also gave me insight into, now that I'm an anchor, what our producers are going through. And I know when I come into work, how I can help them if they need help with anything, because I can understand their side of things and what they have to do to put a show together. So I know that I can help them if, somehow they get busy, we have breaking news or something's going on and they're trying to work on one thing, I feel confident enough that they can let me know and I can jump in and help them out too. So that's what I'm saying. That foundation of a first market is so great because even though I'm not a producer anymore, I still have those tools and the knowledge, so I can still play a part and help out my news team.
Yeah. So would you say it could be beneficial to maybe start out as a producer before you kind of move to that news anchor? Just, I mean, it sounds like you also could be more empathetic too, as you
Yeah,
mentioned, because that whole chaos behind the scenes. But
yeah.
um, is that kind of a way you could even maybe develop yourself more as a news anchor by starting off as a producer?
I would say yes. Not necessarily do you have to do that. Some people, I think, my position was just, unique to me because I'm kind of a news nerd. I like to do
Mm-hmm.
news things. I like to see how everything works. And I was really excited to just even get a job, get up in the doors. I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. But I think it definitely sets you up for being more successful in the future. You don't have to go as a producer. I know some people. I have a friend who she's now a sports reporter and anchor in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but she started out in a small market as a morning anchor straight out of college. So there's different routes you can take, and that was just her route to get to. She wanted to be a sports reporter and anchor, and that's what she's doing now, and she's phenomenal. But she started out doing morning news in a small market. But I would say definitely you don't have to start out as a producer, but if
Right.
you do, I'd say definitely start out as a reporter, as an MMJ, because you get a better knowledge of the community that you're working in when you're boots on the ground, when you're out in the field every day. You get to meet the people in the community, you get to understand the community, get to understand the streets and the roadways, and working with the police chief and the sheriff's department, and you get to be on a first name basis. So it makes it easier as an anchor when, say, there's breaking news and you have to describe where it's happening at. If you, as a reporter, you kind of know where that intersection is, so you can describe it for
Yeah.
viewers at home. Whereas an anchor, you don't really leave the studio, so you're kind of disconnected from that. But if you start out as a reporter, you have that knowledge, and I think it's great. But you can also, as a reporter, you can sit down with a producer and talk with them and shadow them for a day and just kind of learn their role. You don't necessarily
Hmm.
have to, do it, but you can just, I think it's great if people can understand both sides, for producers to understand what it takes for a reporter to go out and turn a package. And then on the other side of things, what a reporter understands what a producer has to do to put the entire show together. Because we work in tandem. A
Yeah.
producer can't put a show together if they don't have reporter packages. A reporter can't air their package if there's no producer to put the show together and to booth it. So I think it would be great if people just kind of saw both sides. You don't necessarily have to start out as a producer to become an anchor. You can start out as an anchor in a small market. You can start out as a reporter, then work your way up to full-time anchor, which is kind of the role or the trajectory I took. So I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can get into the industry. Some people even start out as, if you watch, I would say the Today Show with Jenna and Chanel. Chanel started out as a production assistant. I'm pretty positive.
Oh,
I may be mixing her up with someone else. I'm so sorry.
wow.
Someone else I know started out as production assistant in New York and then worked their way up to actually being on air, which is kind of rare for a big market to go from, no other prior experience in smaller markets. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of different ways that you work your way up. I think as long as you want it and you try hard enough
Hmm.
and you're willing to learn, then you can. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We love a little
He wants to play.
showcase.
Um, then as long as you're willing to learn and grow and get better, then you can get to whatever
Hmm.
spot or destination you want to get to in the industry.
Nice. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so now with your role as the news anchor, what does your typical day look like now compared to, when it was probably more hectic whenever you
Yeah.
were that producer?
Yeah, I will say my day is not as hectic. It does start a lot earlier. I'm a lot more tired than I probably was back then as being a morning anchor, because I wake up at 2 a.m. To get ready
Woof.
for work Monday through Friday. And I have to be in at 4 a.m. So I usually like to do my hair and makeup at home. So I come into work already ready to go. So get in at 4 a.m. We have a 5.5 hour morning show, so which is not very common for markets of this size. So I
Hmm.
am a very unique position. Most news stations have probably like a 2 hour morning show, 2.5, but we were lucky to have 5.5. So the show starts at 4:30. So I come in at 4, have about 30 minutes to kind of just check in with our producers, read over as many scripts as I can, because like I said, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 6 shows. So in those 30 minutes, I'm not able to actually get through all 6 shows, because there's a 30-minute at 4:30 and the rest are hour-long shows. So
Hmm.
as I'm anchoring, I'm having to go through the scripts and read through them, make any changes that I need. If producers need me to, look through something or add something, which our producers are honestly really great. They come in at 10 and 11 p.m. the night before. So typically by the time I come in, everything's already taken care of. But if they ever need me to jump in, I'm more than happy to do that. But usually throughout the show, I'm not only anchoring the show, but also reading ahead, reading scripts. We do, because our show is so long and so vast, and we're on two different channels. We do 2.5 hours on CBS and then 3 hours on Fox. We have a lot of guests that come on the show, so I do a lot of interviewing in the studio, which is a lot of fun, getting to meet the community and getting to see all the different organizations and people making a difference in our community. It's honestly so fun. And then doing a lot of that, I also produce our 30-minute health show that airs on Sundays. So during the show, while I'm reading the scripts, I'm also working ahead and producing that show. And adding health stories to that and writing up scripts for that. So sometimes I'm emailing guests back about coming on to the health show. Sometimes I'm reading ahead. We also have like a Teams chat that is very active with all of our members. So also reading through that just in case they're letting us know that there's breaking news right now in Bakersfield. I don't think you guys are affected by it. I was in LA this weekend and it wasn't there, but the fog, I don't know if you guys heard about it. The
Oh,
fog is taking over the Central Valley right now. All of Fresno, San Francisco, Bakersfield is just covered in super dense fog. So that's been kind of a big thing that we're talking about here. And there was, I want to say on Tuesday, we had about, was it last week? I think it was Tuesday. There had to be about 30 plus school closures because of how our delays and school closures, mixture of two. So I'm constantly checking the websites for that because those are always updating, so having to refresh that. So just kind of, even though I'm anchoring, and some people might think like, oh, anchoring is so easy, just sit in a chair and read the scripts. It's so much more than that. You're really having to multitask at the same time. So while it's not having to go out in the field and turn a package, it's still just same amount of work. You're just inside.
yeah. So it kind of sounds like multitasking is an important skill. So what
Absolutely.
are the most essential skills for success on air that people might not expect a news anchor
Mm.
to have?
Okay, that's a really good question. I would say the essential skills also, I feel like you have to be a good listener. I think that's a big thing that some people kind of forget about, especially when, like I said, we do a lot of interviews with leaders, just people in the public, organizations. And sometimes it can be easy to just have your list of questions. I see this happen a lot with reporters and some of the ones that I work with. It's easy to have the list of questions and to ask the question and then they answer, and then you just ask your next question, they answer, you ask your next question. I like to have my interviews be a conversation because I think it makes the interviewee more comfortable, and then they'll be more natural to answer the question and give an honest answer on camera, than to just ask the question and then kind of keep going. So it's always important that you listen to your interviewee, because sometimes they might say something that you didn't think of, and it's not a question that you have, but you might be like, oh, that's great, like I want you to elaborate that on that, or
Mhm.
that might generate another question that you think of. So that's something that I'm always preaching about, is always listen to your interviewees and actually just have a conversation with them, because the questions will come naturally. You can read your questions ahead of time and kind of memorize them, but also just listen to your interviewee and kind of go with the flow on the conversation, because that's how you're really going to uncover the story, is just by having a conversation with someone. I would say, obviously, of course, like being able to read and proofread and really take your time. That's one thing. As if you want to be an anchor or a reporter or producer, you're going to have to read and type a lot of scripts. And we are always on a tremendous deadline. Like I said, I only have 30 minutes to read
Oh my
scripts
gosh.
before I go, and then I'm reading them as I'm going through the show. So I'm reading, and then when I'm not on camera, I'm looking down and reading, ahead at the same time. And then as a reporter, you only have a certain amount of hours to go out, do your interview, come back, write up your script, and then put it into the show, put your package together, and then go front it either in studio or out in the field. So you're typing really fast, but you want to make sure that you are looking over your work, because you write for the anchors. The reporters are going to write what the anchor introduces for your story, and you don't want to mess them up by you're typing really fast, and then they're
The
like,
typos.
yeah, typos, and then maybe half the sentence is missing because you're like, oh, I'm going to come back to that, but then you never came back to it because you
Yeah.
didn't, proofread. So that's a big thing that I think always should be drove home, is that always double check your work, always proofread your work, and sometimes just take. I know we're all in a rush for this job, but always take a second to look, a second, a third time, because sometimes it's just that one word that you might miss, and it can change your script completely. So I would say those are some like important skills to have.
Yeah, that's great advice, even just for students now that are listening to proofread their
Yeah.
paper before they submit it.
Yeah.
Also, that organic conversation, even thinking about how our industry chats work, not
Yeah,
having it seem it's like it's so scripted and staged. It's that
exactly.
organic conversation that's taking place. Both
Exactly.
both great advice.
And you're doing a great job at it.
And so my next question is like, how do you guys prepare to deliver news accurately, especially with all these tight deadlines,
Mhm.
and make sure it's accurate and sourced information before you deliver the news?
I think that goes back to just double checking your work.
Mhm.
Also having multiple eyes on it. That's huge, because for me, when I was reporting, I always had to get my script approved, which is the case for most, if not all, reporters. I don't know any reporter that is able to just write a script and just take it to air. You always have to have a script approved, so that you have someone else, double checking your work as well, approving your work, making sure that you are being factual. But for me, a lot of the information I get is from the person I'm interviewing. So a lot of times you don't hear us on air say, I, or this or that, unless we're saying like, I went up to a building and I knocked to go talk to the homeowner, and they weren't there. But you don't do a lot of I think or this or that. It would be, Joe Smith told me, or Joe Smith says, he saw the crash at so and so hour or whatever. It just saves you the liability in case Joe Smith decided he wanted to lie and he wasn't there at that time. But always accredit the quote or sentence, even in your package, to who said it. But definitely always get a second look at it. Always
Mhm.
research, information. If you're doing something on, I'm trying to think, like if uh, like I said, I do a health alert show. So if I was doing something and interviewing someone on cancer rates in Kern County, I'm going to look at that data, because also just helps me going into the interview, kind of having some facts and information myself. So going to trusted websites like the CDC or Kern County Health Department, or whatever local health department you're in, going to a trusted site and kind of getting that information beforehand, and looking at stats or data or information before you decide to pull that and put that in your script. So just make sure you're always going to, trusted website. Don't just get something off of like joeschmo.com and then
Right.
just put that in there. Make sure it's, the CDC, a government website, something that is trusted and is going to be actual information.
Yeah, very good points. And, speaking into you covering, that health segment and your time during COVID, can you share any story that may have challenged you personally or professionally during your time as a news anchor or even as a producer?
That's a good question. Hmm. I'll say a story that really challenged me, that I'm proud of, but it was a lot of work. It's not technically health related, but it was when I was in Chattanooga and I got a press release from someone. I cannot remember who it was, but just saying that there was a documentary being made about 5 Black women that were shot by the KKK in the 1980s in Chattanooga, and it kind of sparked my interest. That as reporters, you'll get a lot of press releases into your inbox, and not all of them are going to be story worthy, but there are going to be some that kind of spark your interest and you kind of want to dig deeper. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what happened with me, and this ended up turning into what we call sweeps pieces. So for those who don't know what a sweeps piece is just certain times of the year we get our rankings and our numbers. So stations and markets, to boost their ratings and their numbers, will do special type of pieces that are kind of more in depth, and they'll run a lot of commercials on them to tease towards them so that they get viewers to watch.
Yeah.
And so then that the rankings come out and we got a lot of viewers. So this was one of those times where I was like, hey, I want to do a sweeps piece on this. I want to do an in-depth look on it. And did a lot of research and history, went to the library to go through the archives, because again, this happened in the 1980s, so had to go to the library to look through and get like article clippings. Had to go to our station's attic where they kept all the old VHSs, and I promise you, I think I lived upstairs with all the cobwebs and dead bugs in there, because I was searching, because our like video library catalog, it didn't have like kind of like the years, it had like
Oh,
random numbers on the outside of the case. So I had to like open the case, and they thankfully had like the stories kind of written on like a label on it. But at the time, I don't know how they labeled stories back then. They probably
yeah.
label it, 5 women shot by the KKK. I don't know. They probably just, labeled it like Third Street shooting.
Hmm.
So it took, I think I was in that room probably a total of like 15 days in a row, just like pulling video, going back downstairs, putting it into the VHS, watching it, fast forwarding, trying to find it. And that one, it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in that one. I found because it was in the 1980s, I found the grandchildren of one of the women. They all survived, thankfully, but some of them passed away later on in life. Some of them moved away, and nobody could find them years later. I don't know if they changed name or whatever, but there was one lady who stayed in Chattanooga, and her grandkids lived there, and I like tracked them down and begged them to do an interview with me, because the story just was so profound. And I asked around the newsroom, and not a lot of people had heard about it. So I was like, if people in this newsroom who have been here for years and years on end haven't heard about it, then how many people in Chattanooga haven't heard about it? And this is one of those stories that is the reason why I became a journalist, to uncover stories like this and to shine a light on it for people who, don't know about our history and what had happened, because their anniversary was coming up, and they actually had a mural in Chattanooga. But I don't think people knew that the 5 women on, this
The
side of this
history of the
building.
mural.
Exactly.
Wow.
Because I didn't know myself. I was just like, oh, that's a pretty mural, but no one knew. So got to interview the grandchildren, and I got to interview their lawyer who represented them at the time back in the 80s. Interviewed the man that was putting together the documentary. And so it was a lot of work. And then it wasn't until the day that, because it was a two-parter, because it was just so long. It was basically, I made a mini documentary, and I was just so tired at the end of it. But it wasn't until this day that the second one was going to air that I finally found the VHS that had the actual news reporter video from that day from our station. So I was able to put that in, and it had interviews from the women in the 80s, and it had video of them with the police that day when they were shot on the side of the street after they were leaving, a dance club, because it was kind of a drive-by shooting. They were just walking out to go get a taxi and go home, and that's when the KKK drove by and shot them with pellets. So to actually hear their story at the time and put that in was so surreal. To be able to find it, found clips
That
of
was
the
the
reporter.
universe
Yeah,
working in
yeah.
favor.
I was like, oh my goodness, it was the day that it was supposed to air. Probably like 2-3 hours before it was supposed to air, I found it, and I think I started crying, because I was
That's
like, I've been
crazy.
looking for you for weeks. But I feel like that's kind of what the spirit of journalism is you don't stop until you uncover the story. You don't stop until you tell that person's story, and feel like you're doing justice for them. And so that was probably, I would say, the story that really pushed me and kind of re-sparked my love for journalism, because it was difficult. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of moving pieces, and it took, days and days and days, probably weeks, if not months, to get it, put together. But when it finally aired, it was just like a so surreal moment. Me and my photographer who worked on it with me, like we honestly just like hugged each other, and then we're like, okay, we can go home and finally sleep.
Amazing.
Because at the same time that we're doing that, we're still turning other stories in the meantime, and we're still having lives. And I think I was moving apartments at the same time. So it was just so surreal, but finally being able to do it, and then to get responses from even I think my boss had told me a news director from another station watched it and was like, "That's the best thing that we've seen, in this community in a while." And just to hear the responses from the community that they never heard about the story and they enjoyed watching it, that was to me what made that, what I went through, the trials and tribulations to get that
Right.
story. It made it worth it.
Made it all worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
thank you for putting in that sweat and energy to share that story. Hopefully that mural will get a plaque soon. So,
Yeah, I
more
hope
people can know that
so.
information because wow, that is an amazing story.
Yeah, thank you. It was just I was just so honored to be able to feel like I did justice for it. I feel
Yeah,
like a lot of times
absolutely.
we get so used to as a reporter when you're turning a story every single day, we get used to like kind of this like I'm so sorry, Vincent, you
It's
have to
okay.
get down. This kind of like roboticness, and
Yeah.
so sometimes we have to stop and think, what is our why? Why are we
Mhm.
doing this? Who is watching this? How can we tell this story differently or make an impact on the viewers watching this? And so that kind of helps spark that again, that mindset again to think outside the box.
Right. And helps that drive for you to
Yeah,
continue.
absolutely.
Well, with that, so what are some of the best ways to find opportunities for folks who are looking to do a career in this field and may have, share that same passion that you
Yeah.
have with the news?
I would say for people that are interested in doing this in any capacity, whether that's producing, reporting, anchoring, I would always say what someone told me is that even though you are in college, you guys are journalists right now. You are a journalist. You are turning stories for your classes. You're writing articles. You are going out and interviewing people. So think of yourself as a journalist right now, because I know when I was in college, I was like, oh, I'm not a journalist. I want to be a journalist. I can't wait until I'm a journalist. But someone's like, well, you are. You have to turn. I remember I had to turn a story for Professor Sanchez's class, and I had to go out and set up a camera and interview someone and put a package together. And they're like, you did a story. You're a journalist. So think of yourself as a journalist now. And I would say if you're interested in getting into the field, definitely think about moving because
Mhm.
if you're like me when you're in college, I was like, I'm not leaving California. California is a beautiful state. Why do I need to go anywhere else?
Right.
I can get a job in LA today. Very delusional of me. As someone wanting to be on air, I do know people who got jobs in LA as production assistants or assignment editors. But
Mhm.
if you want to be on air, you're definitely going to have to, branch out
Travel.
your comfort
Yeah.
zone and travel, and you might like it. I mean, I loved it. I loved my time in Montana. I loved my time in the Tennessee. Eventually, hopefully, maybe I'll move back to the South because it was just such an amazing place. Love the culture there, but just be willing to, move, look around, and then also I would say I would highly suggest networking and going to conventions like NABJ. There is a LA chapter of NABJ. And so you don't even have to technically be a member. You can follow them on Instagram, sign up for their newsletter. They have a lot of conventions and jobs fairs in the LA area. And I've been to a couple, and they're really great. And they're really great for networking as well with other journalists that are either starting out like you, are
Hmm.
seasoned journalists. Go to the national conventions. I know NABJ just released that they are having their national convention in August this year in Atlanta. Every year it's somewhere different. I know NAHJ, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, has a national convention. AAAJ, the Asian American Journalists Association, also has a national convention. So, and there's one for like radio, television, and digital RTDNA. Don't quote me on that. I could be saying that wrong, but there's several conventions that happen, and a lot of them have job fairs. I know I went to my first NABJ convention in 2019, and that's honestly, I think, will also help me lead to my job in 2020 because I went to the convention, and they have a lot of forums and talks and conversations and panels and things, and you can go to different ones. And I went to one that was helping you tailor your resume, and so it was great because I learned a lot in that session on how to tailor my resume. And then I took that resume and went to the job fair where they have a bunch of recruiters from all over, from different companies, from different mediums.
And that's
Um,
free?
yeah. Oh well, no, no, it
Oh,
was for students. You get a good discount.
oh, okay.
I
Good to know.
paid $300 for my ticket, but it's over the span of 4 days.
Oh, a long
Um,
one.
So I think it's from Thursday to Sunday, and the job there is, I think, Thursday to Saturday. So yeah, you have to pay admission for it, but you honestly, it's so valuable, the lessons that I learned. And then I think they also have different discounts. If you sometimes work these conventions, they'll cover
Oh,
your
yeah.
fee to that. So there's kind of ways around it. If you can't afford it, there are ways, to go about it. Sometimes you can, find someone to sponsor you to go.
Mhm.
But yeah, I went to job fair and I showed them, my reel, and the recruiters and news directors that were there, they gave me helpful tips on how to tailor my reel and, tailor my resume, tailor my reel. And there were people who got jobs on the spot. I remember
Wow.
I was sitting in the lobby of the convention center working on my resume. And I heard some guy next to me on the phone with his mom saying, "Mom, I just got hired by Fox News right now." And
Wow.
everyone around him, we all started clapping because, we could hear him. He was so excited. And then I went to a dinner that night with one of the companies that were there, and they asked people, raise your hand if you got hired today. And I would say about 10 people raised their hands. So that's also a way. Those conventions, I think, are super. Like I said, they're super valuable.
That's
You learn a
incredible.
lot, but there's also potential to be hired right on the spot. Another thing I would say is go to the station that you're interested in. If there's a station that you think you might want to start at, or you like what they do, reach out to people who work there. Reach out to them and say, hey, can I set up a phone call with you and talk about what your station is like, what a day in your station is like, what they look for in reporters. Do you mind taking a look at my reel? And that's why I think network really comes into it, because you can have other people, like I said, those second pair of eyes, look at your reel, give you some pointers, give you some tips, especially if they work somewhere that you're interested in working. They can let you know, hey, this is what my news director kind of likes. This is what they look for, and you can tailor your resume
Mhm.
and your reel to that. I would say another way is obviously looking online, looking on the websites to see who is hiring, what they're hiring for. But I'll say for any females that are on here, unfortunately, men, I'm so sorry. I only know of the female one, but there is a journalist Facebook group called MM Jane. And that they're always talking about openings and job openings. Girls are always posting their reels in there for feedback, or posting their
Oh, I love
story that
that.
they did. Yeah, there's like 15,000 of
Oh my
us in
gosh.
there. So that honestly is like a tremendous help as well. And that's why I think that, like, again, that networking is just super important, because you can, make friends and make connections with people. And sometimes someone who knows that there's a job opening
Right.
at a station that can help you get your foot in the door. And then I would also say, if you find a job that you're interested in and you apply, definitely also reach out to the news director, connect with them on LinkedIn. Ask them what they're looking for. If you know that, say you have another year still left in school, you can still reach out ahead of time and make that connection with the news director or someone at the station now, and let them see your work and let them know what you're doing. Because a lot of times maybe they can give you pointers, and then they'll remember you a year from now when they have an opening. And then there you go, you networked, and now you have a job in the industry. So there's definitely a lot of ways to get your foot in the door if you really want it.
That's all amazing information for our students and even alumni, especially those Facebook groups, those little hidden
Yes.
gems. You never know. You might find that a mentor through those channels to help you
Yeah.
in this industry. So thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
all of this information. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions that have popped up in our chat. We are starting to get to the end. So I guess maybe, it looks like, let me see. Hmm.
Hi, Zach. I know Zach.
Yeah, so it looks like he has a question. So we can say maybe if we want to wrap up with this. So is with journalism is in a crazy time, how do you stick with your morals and principles, and why with following and sticking to the SPJ code of ethics, especially
Mm.
with time that we are in, with where companies who would rather value opinions rather than their facts and truth, because we owe our loyalty as journalists to the citizens. And he says it's nice to see you keep on killing it.
Well, Zach, great question. He's an awesome student. But I would say the way I stick to it, or the way I see it, is that our job is to tell the news. Our job is to be unbiased. Our job is not to kind of bring our opinions, our so to speak morals into it, because everyone is going to have a different opinion. Not everyone is going to agree.
Mhm.
Sometimes you might even work for a station whose company might not have the same agreements as you, but don't let that affect your job, because our job is to tell the story, to tell what we went out and learned and what we witnessed. It's not to kind of have a slanted angle.
Mhm.
Um, and that's where reporters, anchors, just I would say just try to stick to telling both sides. And that was a big thing that we did a lot when I was a reporter. If I was covering a protest that maybe leaned one way, we would always make sure that we tried to get the other way as well, so that we had that unbiased storytelling.
Right.
It didn't look like we were just angled one way.
Mhm.
So that would be just the best way, because you can always go home, decompress, and we all are going to have our opinions about what's happening in the world, but you don't want it to impact your work, because that's not our job to tell people what to think or what to feel. Our job is to give them the facts and the tools and let them decide on their own, what come to their own opinion with what we told them. But definitely do your best to get both sides of the story, and not say one person is right or one person is wrong. Think of like I'm trying to think of
Being the
something.
devil's advocate,
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah, exactly.
bipartisan. Yeah.
Yeah, like if someone, I'm trying to think of, like, there was one, like maybe some homeowners that were feuding, where someone's driving. I remember the story in Chattanooga. I didn't cover it myself, my coworker did, but uh, their neighbor kept driving through their lawn with his big truck to get to his house, and he was claiming that that was part of his property. But the other homeowner, who said, "You keep driving in my lawn," said that was their home, their property. So we're not technically there to say, like, oh,
Right.
this person is right. Just tell both sides of the story. Hear from him, hear from the other guy. Sometimes if we're uncovering something, I guess in that story, you could go to city records, and
Mhm.
look at the zoning and property and things like that. And you can say, I talked to this guy, this is what he said. I talked to this homeowner, this is what he said. We went to, the sitting zoning code or whatever, and we looked at the planning paperwork. And from what it says, this is what it looks like. And
Right.
and that's that. But you're
Siding with one homeowner.
exactly. Yeah. So I think that's just the way to go about it with the times that we're in, is just stick to, just doing your job and doing your facts. And then obviously I would stress this, because I've seen it happen several times. Stay off of social media with your opinions, because that can come back to bite you. I've
Yes,
seen
we see
several
that
people,
often.
fortunately, lose their jobs because they felt one way about whatever it was. But definitely, because we are kind of thrust into the public eye, and we have this job as journalists, and we are to remain unbiased,
Mhm.
definitely just be careful what you say online, because you just don't want that to come and be used against you, and you don't want people to question you as a journalist, as a storyteller, because they're like, hey, well, we can clearly see online that you think this way, so why would
A
I
certain way.
trust your
Yeah.
judgment and your story to be fair to both sides? So definitely a big warning to all
Very great
journalists
tip.
out there. Yeah.
Very important tip. Yeah, especially with so much social media out there, and, you
Yeah.
know, very old Twitter posts people
Yeah.
probably have not
Yeah.
that much
It'll come back. It always does.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. It looks like we don't have any more questions. So Cornelia, we really appreciate you coming on and, sharing your journey in, your journalism field, and seeing your full circle moment from being where you were as a little girl dreaming of this and where you are now. It's amazing work that you're doing. So for those that are attending, once again, please visit the alumni website in the weeks ahead. You'll be able to see this recording and other recordings we have from previous alumni that hosted 49er industry chats. For those that are wanting to maybe look for a mentor, we have our Beach Nexus platform. So that's a great way to find a mentor, or just see if there's other network groups you would like to join. So make sure to follow us on LinkedIn and our social media accounts. And with that, thank you and go Beach.
Thank you all. Go Beach. And if you ever have questions or want to connect with me, you can totally do that on Instagram. I'm always, as Zach knows, you can always message me. I'm always an open book or here for questions if you have them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Stop participant sharing. Okay, so